December 1944, Ardennes Forest. The snow falls thick and silent through the pine trees, muffling the rumble of distant artillery. A German panzer grenadier named Klaus crouches in a foxhole near Bastogne, hands trembling from cold and something deeper, the growing certainty that this war cannot be won. His company has just overrun an American position, and scattered among the frozen bodies and abandoned equipment, he finds a radio. Not the heavy, temperamental, torn food D2 that requires 2 men to carry and a specialist to operate, but a compact SCR 300 backpack unit, small enough for one soldier, still functioning despite a bullet hole through its canvas case. He turns the dial experimentally. Through the static, American voices crackle with impossible clarity. Coordinates, supply requests, casualty reports, a constant stream of communication flowing like water through channels his own army can barely maintain. He stares at the device, this mass-produced miracle, and understands with sudden, cold precision that Germany is not fighting an enemy. Germany is fighting an entirely different century. For 4 years, German troops had been told their superiority was intrinsic, bred into Aryan blood, forged through Prussian discipline, guaranteed by National Socialist will. The Wehrmacht's early victories seemed to confirm this mythology. Polish cavalry fell to panzer divisions. France collapsed in 6 weeks. The Luftwaffe ruled European skies. German military doctrine emphasized Auftragstaktik, mission-type tactics where subordinate commanders exercised initiative within broad strategic directives. It was a philosophy built for the radios Germany possessed in 1939. Limited, unreliable, suitable for transmitting orders, but not for the constant coordination modern mechanized warfare demanded. German commanders compensated through training, through decentralized decision-making, through the cultivation of an officer corps educated to think independently when communication failed, which it did, constantly. Then came North Africa and Sicily and Normandy, and suddenly German troops were fighting an enemy whose radios never seemed to fail. American infantry squads possessed man-portable FM radios, the SCR 300 and its smaller cousin, the SCR 536 handy-talkie, that worked in dust storms, in rain, after being dropped from trucks, even after taking shrapnel. Battalion commanders could talk directly to company leaders. Company leaders could coordinate with adjacent units in real time. Artillery observers could call fire missions and adjust them within minutes, not hours. The German soldier, trained to operate independently when communications broke down, now faced an opponent who maintained constant contact across entire battlefronts. It was like fighting an organism with a nervous system, every unit aware of every other unit's position and status, while the Wehrmacht remained a collection of isolated cells, brilliant individually, but increasingly unable to coordinate as the war ground on. Wehrmacht after-action reports, captured and analyzed by Allied intelligence, reveal the growing psychological impact. One German officer in Normandy wrote with barely concealed amazement, "The Americans seem to have radios in every vehicle, every tank, even individual infantry squads. They coordinate attacks with a precision we can only achieve through weeks of planning and rehearsal, yet they do it spontaneously, adjusting to battlefield conditions in real time." Another report from the Italian campaign noted that American units, when ambushed or surrounded, could summon artillery support, airstrikes, and reinforcements within minutes, creating a responsive flexibility that German doctrine had no answer for. The vaunted Auftragstaktik assumed communication would fail and trained officers to operate independently. But what advantage did independent thinking provide when the enemy's commanders possessed perfect information about the entire battlefield? The technological gap was not merely one of quality, but of philosophy. Germany produced excellent radios for its time. The WWII, the Feldfuu, precision instruments built by skilled craftsmen in limited quantities. America produced adequate radios in incomprehensible volume, standardized for mass production, designed for durability over elegance, built by assembly line workers in factories that could output thousands per week.
By 1944, the United States was manufacturing over 50,000 SCR-300 units annually, enough to equip every infantry company in its expanding army. Germany, strangled by Allied bombing and material shortages, struggled to replace radios lost in combat. The symbolic contrast was inescapable. One nation rationed communication equipment like gold, while the other distributed it like bread.
German troops began collecting American radios whenever possible, not merely for intelligence but for practical use. Panzer crews, frustrated by their own tank radios' limited range and vulnerability to interference, would jerry-rig captured SCR-300s into their vehicles. Infantry officers carried captured handy-talkies as backups when their own equipment failed. This equipment scavenging created its own problems. American forces, aware of the theft, began embedding location beacons in some radio units, turning captured equipment into tracking devices. But the desperation to possess American communications technology revealed a deeper truth. German soldiers no longer believed in their own material superiority. They had seen too many American supply depots overflowing with equipment, too many destroyed American tanks replaced within days, too many shot-down bombers succeeded by 10 more the following morning. The radios became a metonym for everything Germany lacked, not just technology, but the industrial base to produce it, the resources to fuel it, the training infrastructure to deploy it universally, and, perhaps most critically, the social philosophy that made such democratization of technology possible. American military doctrine distributed advanced equipment down to the lowest levels because American culture assumed individual soldiers were valuable, worthy of tools that enhanced their survival and effectiveness. The German military hierarchy, even in its death rows, maintained distinctions. Officers received better equipment, elite units were prioritized, ordinary infantry made do with scraps. This was not merely logistical necessity, but ideological consistency. A society built on hierarchy naturally produced hierarchical resource distribution, even when that distribution undermined battlefield effectiveness. By the spring of 1945, as Allied forces crossed the Rhine and Soviet armies encircled Berlin, German soldiers were surrendering with increasing frequency, and many carried American radios taken from earlier battles, kept working through care and desperation. Interrogators noted a common theme in prisoner interviews. The technology gap had destroyed faith not just in victory, but in the entire National Socialist narrative of German superiority. If the master race could not outproduce, out-innovate, or out-coordinate a mongrel democracy of immigrants and capitalists, then perhaps the ideology itself was the lie. The radios, with their reliable frequency modulation and their inexhaustible batteries, had spoken to truth more persuasive than any propaganda leaflet. Abundance defeats scarcity, and systems that empower individuals will overwhelm systems built on domination. The voice that reaches farthest is not always the loudest. Sometimes it is simply the one that never stops speaking, reliable as sunrise, persistent as truth, connecting every distant outpost to the same undeniable message. We are still here, we are still together, and the static cannot silence us.